Chapter 80. Something visited in the middle of the night. At night, Music King and the others formed a circle and placed a few solar-powered lamps around them. Because Xiao Dongyang and the others were there, Wei Ran didn't bring out tents and the like, and even ate compressed food similar to Xiao Dongyang and the others. I can't take out a pot to cook things again, let alone everyone knows that the pot can't be folded. I haven't seen anyone with a pot on their back all day, and a pot suddenly appeared and I can convince anyone. In fact, compressed food is not unpalatable, that is, it is a bit choking. Wei Ran ate the unpacked compressed food delivered by Music King, and asked, "Today we killed about 5,000 zombies." Music King unscrewed a bottle of water and fed it to her to moisten her throat well. There are about 7,000 left, and it can be cleaned up tomorrow. The North District is a commercial area. Although there are a large number of zombies, fortunately the area is not very large, and the zombies are relatively concentrated, so it is easier to deal with. Yan Yang asked curiously, why are there so many zombies here? Chen Wei put his hands on his bent knees. Although there are also aliens in Land City, but the number is relatively small. Although they are fierce, the zombies here, it's because they are several times more numerous than they are. Yan Yang suddenly realized that's how it is. Where there are few aliens, there are many zombies. This is the situation in the last days. If people want to develop normally, these two kinds of monsters cannot exist at the same time, which will seriously affect human survival. Because we have to get up early tomorrow, Music King, Chen Wei and Xiao Dongyang let them go to rest after explaining what they will do tomorrow. When performing tasks outside, everyone is sleeping on the ground. Music King put his arms on the back of Wei Ran's neck and let her sleep on her pillow, which was more comfortable. At about 5 o'clock in the morning, the sky was dim, and Music King slowly opened his eyelids to reveal his cold eyes, clear and sharp. Immediately afterwards, a small instrument next to Yu Ming made a vibrating beeping sound. Yu Ming suddenly woke up and sat up. Wei Ran and the others were in light sleep, and they were all awakened by this little device. Yu Ming got up and looked at the closed iron door of the stairs not far away, and said slowly, "I installed 2 living infrared detectors on the broken ladder above. One is at the broken ladder, and the last one is on the 19th floor. Because there are still 1 or 2 steps of stairs hanging on some walls, so just in case, Yu Ming installed live infrared rays for monitoring. Now the sound is that something is going up the broken ladder." Xiao Dongyang folded a fluorescent stick and threw it at the door of the stairs. It was enough to illuminate the vicinity. Buzzing ... beep. At this time the second sound came out with the vibration, and the thing had reached the 19th floor. Xiao Dongyang and his party are already on alert. Being able to jump up the broken ladder with several floors, Chen Wei couldn't help asking alien. Music King stood between them, with a hint of meaning in his eyes. No, but he is a big guy with a lot of fun. As soon as it fell, the iron door slammed. Roar, there was a deafening roar. Wei Ran was surprised for a moment. This cry ... how does it sound like? Music King waved his hand back to signal to back off. Everyone retreated to a safe distance from the iron gate. After all, this iron door is an ordinary door. How could it withstand such a violent impact? It was smashed to the side after just a few hits. From the dark inside, the white plush is revealed bit by bit, until it is complete under the light of the strong fluorescent stick. It is a snow-white lion. Yan Yang was surprised how come there are lions here. At this time, the male lion was already in the posture of a king, fully exposed to everyone's eyes with majesty, and was roaring in a low voice. Wei Ran looked at the lion carefully with sharp eyes. There's something wrong with it. This lion is more muscular than ordinary lions, and it's even more than half its size. People also noticed. Music King was calm and nodded slightly. This is a male lion that has been artificially mutated. When the lion was walking up the stairs, Music King could hear the lion's hatred towards humans. So when I saw this male lion, I invaded its consciousness and saw the scene of it being experimented from its memory screen. Wei Ran was astonished. In her previous life, she had never heard of an experiment that could mutate animals, and why did the animals mutate? It has supernatural powers, it escaped after being tortured, and now it is very hostile to humans as soon as Mu Ziking finished speaking. The snow-white lion roared and jumped towards him. Although it is huge, it moves lightly. It's really fast and people are caught off guard. A silver light flashed, it hit the protective shield that Mu Ziking summoned, and then was bounced off and hit the wall behind. Soon it stood up again, staring fiercely at Mu Ziking, as if it knew who had bounced it away. Mu Ziking lowered his head slightly, stroked Wei Ran's slender waist and whispered to her, "You and them get back first." Wei Ran knew that Mu Ziking was interested in this lion, so she nodded with a smile and backed away from them some. At this time, the snow-white lion ran away for a few seconds and was about to rush straight at Mu Ziking. But Mu Ziking raised his hand, palm down suddenly, and the lion fell down instantly, taking a mouthful of dust. Immediately afterwards, the male lion swayed to the ground as if being grabbed by its legs and feet, and finally hit the fence in the distance with its last throw. The fence was cracked several times. At this time, everyone's face had that it hurts. It should be very painful expression on their faces. It struggled to get up, shook its head violently to wake itself up, immediately stepped on the objects around it and jumped up into the air, but disappeared. Invisibility ability. Everyone looked left, right, up and down at the empty surroundings. Wei Ran asked in a daze, "Where is it?" Mu Ziking raised his head slightly, his cold eyes slowly slid upwards, and the corners of his mouth curled coldly up there. Wei Ran and the others immediately went to the place when they heard the words, "Look up." Suddenly, the big snow-white lion suddenly appeared in the sky above them. Its snow-white body seemed to have a layer of something on it, shining brightly under the sunlight of the spotlight. There were waving wings growing on the back of his body, and the fluttering wings instantly burst into a strong wind, and immediately fell from the sky and rushed towards Mu Ziking. And Mu Ziking directly teleported to dodge the attack. Bang, the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground. The snow-white male lion landed on the empty space that was already deserted. For a moment, dust rose up and covered it. Xiao Dongyang and his group seized the right opportunity to shoot intensively, but they were obviously hit, but they seemed to be blocked. He shouted in surprise, "What's going on here?" Seeing this, Gu Ming wanted to summon Li Kun to strike it, but was stopped by Mu Ziking, with a hint of playfulness in his eyes. "This lion is quite interesting." At this moment, the dust dispersed, and Wei Ran and the others saw the condition of the snow-white lion. Its body is covered with a diamond-like material, and that's why it was shining brightly in mid-air just now. Wei Ran was surprised. There are many types of transformation abilities, and this male lion is the most advanced one, the diamond form. This form is indestructible and can withstand bullets and even supernatural attacks, but how long it lasts depends on the power level. But Wei Ran thought that it was invisible before, coupled with flying, and now it is transformed again. Wei Ran's face darkened. This lion already has 3 abilities. Except for the omnipotent ability of the spiritual consciousness controller, the others can only have 2 abilities, 1 main and 1 auxiliary. This is something that has not changed even in this life. This male lion is undoubtedly a success, so there must be countless failures before it. Who is doing such a thing? Chapter 81. You are still the King of Kings. The snow-white male lion jumped up again, while maintaining its diamond shape, attacking the leader Mu Ziking. When its sharp claws were only millimeters away from Mu Ziking finally glanced at it coldly. Just like that, the snow-white lion was frozen in mid-air and could not move, and the diamond shape retreated because of Mu Ziking's control. To be honest, if ordinary people with supernatural abilities encounter it, they will probably die. But unfortunately, it met Mu Ziking, and it was doomed to lose from the very beginning. Wei Ran and others stepped up from behind Mu Ziking to watch. Huh? Its eyes are still rolling. Brother, why is the lion's consciousness still awake? Wei Ran turned and pulled Mu Ziking and asked. The corner of Mu Zikang's mouth curled slightly because I only restricted its behavior but didn't control its consciousness. Xiao Dongyang didn't understand why Mu Zikang didn't completely control such a dangerous species. But Chen Wei and the others were happy. Wei Ran pursed her lips and giggled, raised her small face to look at the immobile lion, and took the opportunity to reach out and stroke the snow-white soft fur to comfort her. Don't be wrong, ... You are still the king of animals. Look at me, brother is willing to play with you a few times, so that you don't lose face or lose face. This time the snow-white lion's eyes rolled even faster. The others burst out laughing even more at this time. Only now did Xiao Dongyang understand that Mu Zikang was simply interested in this lion and had teased it from beginning to end. After breakfast, it was already dawn. Everyone packed up their weapons and was ready to go. Wei Ran looked at the white lion that was still suspended in the frozen frame, and then asked Mu Zikang, brother, what should I do with this white lion? Mu Zikang's eyes turned slightly, and the white lion was finally let down. It knew well that it was not Mu Zikang's opponent, so it retreated to the side repeatedly and still roared. Mu Zikang rolled his eyes coldly, and the white lion didn't dare to be presumptuous anymore, and immediately shrank away silently. Yan Yang laughed dumbly. This lion is very psychic. Suddenly the white lion jumped the fence and disappeared from everyone's eyes. Wei Ran was startled. As soon as he quickly reached the fence, the white lion flapped its wings and rushed up and flew away from them. She chuckled lightly, forgetting that it could fly for a moment. Gu Ming used a rope launch gun to fix the rope to the large terrace on one of the floors of a building in front. It was only after Wei Ran came down that she realized that it was a residential house, but the people inside had long since disappeared, and the iron gate was also dilapidated. After everyone came over, Gu Ming cut off the rope. Mu Zikang and his group walked out of the house. Gu Ming, Jiang Nanfeng, Chen Wei and Su Yi went to explore the way first, and after confirming that it was safe, they made an okay gesture. Mu Zikang can use his consciousness to investigate the situation, which will save a lot of trouble. But Mu Zikang did not allow Gu Ming and the others to rely on him, and asked them to do what they should do when performing tasks, and not to throw away their warning belts. He ignored all small fights. For example, when he came here this time, at most he would tell where there are many zombies and guide the direction. This is the case even when encountering high-level zombies. They went down the stairs until they were out at the bottom and went straight inside. Along the way, he encountered several groups of zombies, and Mu Zikang deliberately threw a few grenades to blow them up. The main reason was to make an explosion to make the zombies gather. When passing by the entrance of a shopping mall, several zombies suddenly rushed over from the corner, and Wei Ran, who was walking next to Mu Zikang, calmly kicked the nearest zombie a few meters away, firing several shots with precision kill. Jiang Nanfeng summoned an ice pick and flew towards the remaining zombies, nailing them to the wooden door on one side. Gu Ming called out a high-voltage current, which shocked the zombies until they trembled violently, and they didn't stop until they smelled a strong smell of burning. But the appearance of the zombie nailed to the wall is still intact. Chen Wei rolled his eyes again at Gu Ming, who was already walking ahead. A person from Xiao Dongyang saw that the zombies were not damaged, so he asked Xiao Dongyang, Lieutenant Colonel Xiao, why is his level 20 not comparable to level 10? Xiao Dongyang saw from yesterday Mu Zikang knows that he is definitely not level 50 by doing that. For a person with such a strong level, the people around him will definitely not only be at level 20. He looked at the zombies and said, you can find out by cutting those zombies open. The man was puzzled, but he did it anyway. But after the knife went down, I was shocked to see that the internal organs of several zombies had been charred black, and they would shatter when touched. There is also a supermarket in the shopping mall, although the items on the shelves inside have been moved almost. But Mu Zikang went straight in and found a mountain of supplies in several hidden large warehouses. Because of the remoteness of Land City, people here are used to hoarding a large amount of goods. He turned to Xiao Dongyang and said indifferently, you remember this place yourself. After you go out, let the southern border send a cargo plane to transport the supplies back. Xiao Dongyang looked at the supplies in front of him and nodded in amazement. He has performed so many missions outside, and he has never tried to find so many supplies at one time. The sound of the zombies outside was getting closer and closer. Mu Ziking didn't want to waste any more time entangled with the zombies here. He said to Su Yingying and Xiao Dongyang, go and lead the zombies to the open space you saw from the satellite map as you said last night. Su Yingying and Xiao Dongyang nodded and led them out. He turned to look at Yu Ming, Jiangnan Feng and Chen Wei go to the other side to lure the zombies over. Gu Ming and the others immediately responded, okay, in the end, only Mu Zikang and Wei Ran were left in the shopping mall. He took Wei Ran directly out of the shopping mall, took out a grenade, pulled off the safety ring and threw it away, and an explosion attracted a large wave of zombies. Then he took Wei Ran out of the shopping mall and led the zombies to the open space to find a commanding height. This time, Mu Zikang didn't use grenade bombs because the power of the grenade bombs was too powerful and it would destroy the supplies he just found in the mall. Ran, take out the laser bazooka and laser bombs from the Research Institute yesterday and use this opportunity to try new weapons. Yes, okay. Wei Ran took a light bazooka and laser bombs, take it out, and there are more than a dozen laser bombs. Brother Chen Wei, Gu Ming, and Nanfeng are already in place. Su Yi Yanying is in place. Xiao Dongyang is in place. At this time, Gu Ming, the others, and Xiao Dongyang both found the commanding heights according to the plan. Each carried a lightweight laser bazooka over their shoulders. Brother, the group of zombies is coming. Mu Zikang took the lead and shot at the densely packed zombies. The zombies that were hit were dissolved in a large area, and the damage power and range were better than foreign laser weapons, which should be the result of improvement. And the flash of the blue laser was the signal for all to fire, and the laser shells shot at the zombies from all directions. Boom. Boom. Boom, a series of explosions sounded. All the zombies in the northern district of Lanchi were exterminated in this way. Laser weapons are different from ordinary bombs. Laser weapons will turn the target into pools of blood, so this open space has now become a place for zombies to dissolve blood. Chapter 82. Don't let him die. Happily, the remaining small number of zombies were wiped out one by Gu Ming and Xiao Dongyang and others. Mu Zikang led everyone to teleport out of the place where the North District came in at that time, and it was already evening when they came out of the North District. Although Bai Xinzi had been in communication with Xiao Dongyang, she waited outside for 2 days and dared not leave. Seeing them coming out at this time, I hurried out of the car to meet them. Lieutenant Colonel Xiao, Mr. Mu, you finally came out, and the base kept asking about your situation. I was also worried. How are you all? Xiao Dongyang, but his eyes kept on looking at Mu Zikang. Before Xiao Dongyang could answer, Wei Ran replied jokingly, Miss Bai, haven't you been in touch these 2 days? Okay, don't you know? Bai Xinzi was choked by Wei Ran, but you had to swallow it forcefully, and forced a smile. That's right. Anger surged up in her heart, and she originally wanted to have a word with Mu Zikang, but was disturbed by Wei Ran. But in fact, Wei Ran didn't make a sound, so how could Mu Zikang pay any attention to her? Seeing Wei Ran protecting his man and tearing up the green tea without mercy, Jiangnan Feng and the others all lowered their heads and secretly laughed. Muzi took Wei Ran's slender shoulders, kneaded them twice, and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly, very satisfied with her way of protecting food. In the evening, Mu Zikang and the others returned to their previous foothold. No one in the other bases expected that the North District had the most zombies, but it was the first to complete the mission. And there were no casualties. This made the people in other bases who had lost their soldiers and generals red-eyed with jealousy. So when the cargo plane from the southern border base came to transport supplies from the northern area the next day, all the bases in the camp exploded again. How could people from other bases be willing to move all the materials from the northern region to the south? At this moment, they are all gathered in the camp of the southern border base to entangle. Director Huang, Everyone came here with the Juzhong base. There will be damaged personnel in each base, but his southern base is safe and sound. It's not fair to take away the supplies now. Yes, my base lost 3 people yesterday, and the east area has not been resolved yet. We absolutely do not agree with the southern border base moving supplies away. People from the southern border base are not allowed to leave Lanchi. Bai Xinzi followed Xiao Dongyang, and never in such a situation. I dare not say a word. The corners of Xiao Dongyang's mouth were tightly pursed, his face darkened. These bastards always push the most difficult rotten bones to the southern border base. Now that there are a lot of supplies, they all have different faces. The people at the southern border base want to come and go. When will it be your turn to say something? A cold, deep and powerful voice made the noisy people suddenly quiet. Then everyone looked in the direction of the sound, the RV. Mu Zikang, who was wearing black casual clothes, slowly came out of the RV step by step, with his hands in his trouser pockets. His face darkened, and his dark eyes were full of coldness. Followed by Wei Ran and Gu Ming. Mu Zikang's eyes turned coldly and looked at everyone. His fierce and restrained aura made the people here dare not speak for no reason. Huang Jinlong, manager of the Juzhong base, saw that everyone was silent, and thought to himself that this is not possible, and the Juzhong base also wanted the supplies. He pretended to be a peacemaker and laughed. Everyone knows the difficulties, but this time the southern border base has indeed taken over the most difficult area. It should be the priority to find supplies. But the Golden Dragon paused, looked at Mu Zikang and continued with a look of embarrassment. Other bases are indeed not as rich in weapons and supplies as the southern border base, so it's better to do this. How about 5 points, and the southern base gets 50%? It's better than nothing, so at this time, people from other bases agreed. What they thought in their minds was why the southern border was the #1 base, because supplies and weapons were sufficient. So as the big brother, the southern border base should make concessions. Mu Zikang lowered his head slightly and let out a sneer. Everyone fell silent and looked at him again. I said. Mu Zikang slowly turned his cold and stern eyes to look at the Golden Dragon, and said word by word, all materials from the northern region belong to the southern region, so no one is allowed to take even a piece of waste paper. The faces of the people in other bases are very different. In the past, the supplies that would be found in joint operations would also be like this. Relying on the fact that the southern border base is all county people, they always ask them to contribute, but this time, Mu Zikang refused strongly. Golden Dragon's face was livid, and he was about to explode when Wei Ran interrupted him. Wei Ran snorted a few times and said sarcastically, it's fine if the equipment is inferior to others, but it's clear at a glance how many people with your abilities are more than those in the southern border. But you are ashamed to admit that you are not as good as others. This is the first time I have heard it so funny. Wei Ran's words made people in other bases feel ashamed. There are guns and cannons in each base, and the number of people with supernatural powers is more than 3 times that of the southern border base. The southern border only picks the northern district, and the remaining 3 districts are divided into 5 bases. One of the people in the base was originally unconvinced. Seeing that Wei Ran, who had no superpowers, could speak so brazenly, he pointed at Wei Ran and said angrily, "You deserve to speak here." Ah! The next second, the man was inexplicably lifted up to mid-air, and then was thrown violently before passing out. Now, the people here knew that Mu Zikang was a mind controller, and then they really shut up one after another, not daring to say another word. After all, the spiritual consciousness controller is a godlike existence. Control everything he wants to control. Du Ming, Nanfang, Chen Wei, Su Yi, Xiao Dongyang, you all take people to the supplies in the North District to guard against them. If someone invades, Mu Zikang slightly tilted his head and looked sideways, and said coldly and slowly, it doesn't matter if you shoot or kill. His eyes squinted fiercely. Everyone, cruel and icy clear. If someone wants to die, remember not to let him die happily. The people who followed the plane from the southern border base saw the huge amount of supplies and repeatedly asked Xiao Dongyang if he can move all of them. It's not that they are long-winded, but that most of them were always divided by other bases before, and in the end it was actually apart. So this time they moved in high spirits. Especially Xiao Dongyang kept grinning happily. Chen Wei couldn't help asking, "Are you so happy?" Xiao Dongyang replied, "You really don't know that this is the first time our base can get all the supplies. The most exciting. Why is the South Territory ranked first, but it is always insulted by other bases, and the respect is not as high as Juchong? It is because other bases know that the county people's code is to put the people first, so they have been kidnapping the southern border morally. But now this model is no longer suitable for the end of the world. Only when you are strong can you keep the people you want to protect." Chapter 83. Who teased me? After 2 full days of moving the materials this time, a large cargo plane was packed to the brim and set off for the southern border base. In the next 2 months, they went to various places to carry out encirclement and suppression operations. The southern border was also the base that killed the most zombies and collected the most supplies during this period. Because Mu Ziking said forcefully wherever the southern border base is deployed, no matter how much or how little supplies there are, they are all from the southern border. People with a base contacted Shangguan Ling to complain about Mu Ziking's actions. But Shangguan Ling just said Mu Ziking can't control him. As the siege of zombies is coming to an end, and so far no one has been lost in the southern border, this makes the other bases that have lost more than half of them have a strong sense of fear towards the southern border base. During the meeting of the 6 bases, as long as Mu Ziking spoke, the leaders of other bases did not dare to intervene, so there was no slightest contempt when they met for the first time. When sleeping at night, a sly light flashed across Wei Ran's eyes, and she retracted into Mu Ziking's arms, who had just laid down. Soft fingers deliberately traced circles on his hard and warm chest, and then quietly pressed his white, tender and smooth long legs into Mu Ziking. She has been sleeping out during this time, and has never had a chance to get close to her. Finally, she was able to return to the caravan tonight, and even Wei Ran couldn't help it. Mu Ziking closed his eyes to enjoy Wei Ran's rare initiative, and his originally even breathing gradually became slightly rough. Wei Ran's white and tender fingers brought up slight ripples which went down and back and forth on his tight abdominal muscles, and then continued down. Mu Ziking suddenly opened his eyes and looked down. Breathing slightly, the muscles on his body became tense, telling how forbearing he was. In fact, Wei Ran wanted to tease Mu Ziking, but when she touched her, she became more and more shy. The flush ran up her neck and covered her face quickly, and she was even afraid to pull her hand back. But Mu Ziking firmly held him down. No more. Wei Ran buried her head in Mu Ziking's neck, begging for mercy in a voice as thin as a mosquito. "Who's teasing me? I want to leave after the fire." Mu Ziking's voice was so hoarse and soft that he spoke softly, but his big hand held Wei Ran's hand fiercely to prevent her from moving open half a point. Wei Ran raised her head slightly, looking at Mu Ziking with Qushui eyes. Just as she was about to part her tender lips, Mu Ziking grabbed her tenderly. The big hand was finally willing to let go of her hand. Wei Ran thought that Mu Ziking had let her go, but she didn't expect the big hand to caress her again, and the breath swept over her sensitive ear sockets again. "Brother." Who are you calling?" "Old husband." Mu Ziking immediately covered, sighed, and didn't stop until midnight. The next day. Wei Ran woke up in the morning with a sore body, curled her lips in Mu Ziking's arms, and lost her temper. Mu Ziking laughed a few times, his Adam's apple slid up and down sexily, and his eyes were full of doting. "Who told you to seduce me? Why did you blame me again?" Wei Ran pouted her mouth, annoyed. She secretly swore in her heart that she would never tease Mu Ziking again. Mu Ziking was in a happy mood and fed her a body function recovery liquid, and Wei Ran fully recovered. He coaxed her for a long time before Wei Ran showed her sweet dimples again. Chen Wei made a big pot of preserved egg and lean meat porridge for breakfast this morning, and he also prepared Xiao Dongyang's appetite. The 2 months of getting along allowed Chen Wei and the others to chat with Xiao Dongyang and would call Xiao Dongyang over for dinner from time to time. Xiao Dongyang has a straightforward personality, so Chen Wei and the others also like to talk to such a person. At the moment they were eating porridge on a folding table with a floral tablecloth. Mu Zikang served Wei Ran a bowl. She was just about to pick up a big spoon full of food casually, but Mu Zikang held it down with a frown. Why don't you try the temperature, just stuff it into your mouth. Wei Ran made a grimace and vomited. Stick your tongue out. He was helpless and still worried, so he took the bowl he gave her and blew it to cool until the temperature was right before putting it in front of her. Bai Xinzi was not far from Mu Zikang and Wei Ran, and this kind of scene would often be shown in the past 2 months. Mu Zikang and Wei Ran were as sweet as lacquer, but to her it was a tormenting crit. What made her even more angry was that she couldn't do anything. Yan Ying glanced at Bai Xinzi with a gloomy face, and then asked Xiao Dongyang, "What's the origin of that Bai Xinzi?" Everyone knew that Bai Xinzi's actions had a purpose. Xiao Dongyang also glanced back and sighed. She is the daughter of one of our major generals. She was separated in the end of the world. I thought she would not survive, but I didn't expect her to come back alive. Our colonel is tall, but in the military documents before the end of the world, the colonel with great military achievements will also jump 4 ranks to become the general. Now that the southern border base is controlled by our colonel, he is even more dissatisfied. In general, it is said that the county department also has a side of fighting for power and profit. It seems that Colonel Shengwan is also besieged on all sides in the base. Chen Wei joked. After swallowing the porridge in his mouth, Wei Ran asked, "Why did Shengwan Ling become the leader after you came to the base? Why didn't you change his name?" Xiao Dongyang replied, "Because everyone is used to this name. The colonel said that there is no need to change it, and he said that if it is changed, it may be changed in the future. Let us keep calling it like this." Wei Ran was confused. Why is it called, maybe it will change in the future? But Xiao Dongyang didn't know the answer either. Everyone present was puzzled by Shengwan Ling's words, but Mu Zikang's eyes flashed a hint of meaning, and he remained silent with a cold face. Today will be the last stop of Qinzhou encirclement and suppression. Mu Zikang and the others are going to a forest park. This Qinzhou is under the jurisdiction of Zhejiang Base. Arrive in Qinzhou at noon. Mu Zikang and his party parked a car not far from the forest park, rested for half an hour, and then went straight up the mountain from the foot of the mountain. Bai Xinzi was still left in the armored vehicle in the logistics to maintain smooth communication with the base. Mu Zikang had seen the map of this forest park before he came in. It was quite large, because it used to be a virgin forest and later it was developed to allow people to properly visit the virgin forest. But it was very strange. Yan Ying summoned the plant control technique to find out. "Brother Cheng, there are very few zombies here." Wei Ran wondered, there are so few zombies here, why did the Zhejiang base include this place in the scope of encirclement and suppression? It's not the strangest thing, but the strangest thing is the animals in this forest, they will eat zombies. Wei Ran looked at Mu Zikang, who was not disturbed, and was almost sure. "Brother, do you know what's going on?" Mu Zikang Chung nodded. When he approached Qinzhou, he already felt that something was wrong, and then he heard something in the forest. The corner of Mu Zikang's mouth turned cold. All I can say is, that's a coincidence. Chapter 84. Which base is the experiment conducted on? Mu Zikang teleported the group directly to the undeveloped virgin forest, because animals only move in the deep forest. They walked into the virgin forest with dense undergrowth and smog. After walking for about 20 minutes, there was still nothing except the sound of birds chirping. Jiang Nanfeng muttered, "It's been so long, why haven't we seen any animals?" Just as he said that, there was a sound in the grass in front of him. Everyone immediately set up their guns and aimed at the grass. After a while, a white rabbit jumped out. Only then did everyone breathe a sigh of relief, because the rabbit didn't feel any supernatural powers. Just an ordinary rabbit. Jiang Nanfeng leaned against a big tree at the back, and grinned. "This rabbit is quite fat. We can call it back for extra food. Chen Wei teased him with his back turned. You are not afraid of the whole forest. What kind of virus does the animal in the house have, and it will eat you to death? He wanted to say something to hate Jiang Nanfeng, but was interrupted by Mu Ziking's solemn tone. Come here. Jiang Nanfeng couldn't hear Mu Ziking behind him. What did he say? He turned his head to check the movement around, and when he turned his head again, he saw that other people had already moved closer to Mu Ziking. At this time, the birds and insects in the jungle seemed to be disturbed, and they all screamed and flew around. Jiang Nanfeng also sensed a hint of danger. He was about to step towards Mu Ziking, but Gu Ming waved his hand to stop him. Don't move. He stopped abruptly because of this, and the faces of Mu Ziking and his party on the opposite side were gloomy. Jiang Nanfeng only felt that there seemed to be something big on top of his head, accompanied by the sound of hiss. Hiss, hiss. Now, without looking up, he knew what it was. Suddenly, Jiang Nanfeng only felt that his center of gravity was out of balance. In the next second, he realized that he had returned to Mu Ziking's back. Gu Ming supported his back with one hand to make him stand still. It was only then that Jiang Nanfeng saw a giant boa constrictor entangled in the position he had just stood on. It was as big as a grown man and nearly 10 meters long, but the snake's body had obvious cracks in many places. Fuck, what kind of snake is this? It's so big. Gu Ming calmed down and said, You almost became its prey. Just now, as soon as he swallowed him, it was Mu Ziking who pulled him away from the range of the python. Wei Ran's small face was solemn. Everyone, be careful, you will all be hurt if you are thrown by it. Because this is a python with a power type. The giant python couldn't eat the food that was already in its mouth, and flew into a rage with its bloody mouth open. Suddenly, he attacked Xiao Dongyang. Xiao Dongyang and his party dispersed immediately, and the giant python just rushed into the air. Wei Ran and the others over there shot. The giant python quickly swung its snake body and slid towards Wei Ran. Wei Ran and the others dispersed and ran quickly. Su Yi, this is half of your colleague. Do you want to say hello and let him stop making trouble, or I will kill him with ice? Jiang Nanfeng was still joking. Su Yu dodged to avoid the snake tail attack of the giant python, but the big tree behind him was swept away by it and fell down. He looked at Jiang Nanfeng and pointed to the tree, and spread his hands together as if helpless. I don't think it's very friendly to its peers. Wei Ran shot the giant python in the eyes, and now it twisted the snake wildly. Just for a while, the giant python started to attack more fiercely. But Gu Ming and the others just dodged, but they didn't make many counterattacks. Mu Ziking moved Wei Ran a few times, and said calmly, Stop playing. Xiao Dongyang and his group were dumbfounded. Were they just playing? Yan Yang then summoned the plant vines to entangle the giant python to death, but the giant python with a power-type ability was entangled with the vines to death. At this time, Gu Ming's index finger and middle finger intertwined together. A few streaks of lightning appeared between the fingers, and he clenched into a fist. Immediately, several thunderbolts came out from under the giant python, leapt upwards, pierced through its snake body, and then exploded into charcoal. Wei Ran recalled the strangeness of the snake's body before. She raised her small face and asked Mu Ziking, Why did we see the snake's body crack in the first place? The medicine was hard to grow, and the egg liquid was forcibly injected for experiments, and the body couldn't bear it, so it collapsed. This giant python can't live long. Wei Ran flashed past the snow-white lion. That white lion. Mu Ziking's cold eyes looking into the depths of the forest. It is without exception. It has completely absorbed the egg liquid and the medicine. It is also in this forest now. Mu Ziking nodded. They continued to go deeper, and went out to a relatively empty open space to rest for a while. Mu Ziking, who was removing the weeds from Wei Ran's body with a tender face, suddenly turned cold. He pulled Wei Ran back a few steps slowly. Even though the others were resting, they were also on guard, feeling that Mu Ziking's aura had become bitter. they immediately stood up and gathered together. After a while, in the grass in the distance, there was a large-scale approach from far to near. Chen Wei frowned slightly and asked, "What is this?" "It's a snake again." In just a second, they saw dozens of ferocious and grinning hounds jumping out from the grass, roaring in low voices, as if they were about to die in the next second. Come on the offensive. The hounds themselves were already larger than ordinary dogs, and now they were even more so, more than double the size, but each of them still had that cracked hole on its body. Some are so deep that even the white bones can be seen. "It's all like this. Don't they feel pain?" Wei Ran frowned when she saw the group of hounds breaking apart. Mu Ziking calmly said, "During countless painful experiments, their consciousness has long been numb and all perceptions have disappeared. Now they only exist for killing in. Other words, they are completely mad dogs." Xiao Dongyang scolded angrily, "Which bastard base is doing this kind of cruel experiment?" At this time, the group of hounds changed formation and formed a semi-encirclement circle, apparently wanting to disperse their attacks. Although he has lost consciousness, he has not lost the ability to fight in groups. Suddenly, the hounds ran towards them at once. Mu Ziking stopped the 5-6 hound that was attacking and biting him, and then exploded in the air, turning the bones into ashes. Then he took Wei Ran back behind him. Ran, take out your bow and arrow. Now is a good time to practice." "Yes," Wei Ran nodded excitedly. Then he took out a palm-length black strip. Wei Ran held it and flicked it aside, and it suddenly turned into a half-length black bow and arrow. Mu Ziking pinched the finger-long arrow and stretched it into a 1-meter-long arrow. Wei Ran took the arrow, drew the bow fully, and aimed at a fast-running hound to release the arrow. "Call out." Shh. One blow was fatal. Zhang Minfeng summoned a giant ice knife and slashed horizontally at the dozen or so hounds in front, which were cut in half. Xiao Dongyang and his group also used supernatural powers to counterattack. This is a group of hounds with swift abilities, and sometimes guns can't catch up with them. Yan Ying's palms are facing inward, the middle finger and the ring finger are close to the thumb, and then the fingering formula remains unchanged. The left hand is facing down and the right hand is facing up, correspondingly opposite, and the two hands are clasped and twisted. The plants are surging rapidly, whether it is the thick bowl-like vines or the countless stems and roots under the thin roots. They seem to be extremely strong, entangle the remaining hounds, and instantly strangle them into pieces. Chapter 85. What about Xiao Ran? At this time there was another roar that shook the mountains in the distance. Wei Ran looked in the direction of the roar in the distance. It is a snow-white lion. In the next second, Mu Ziking led everyone to the place where the roar was just heard. But there is no trace of the snow lion. Yan Ying turned to Mu Ziking and said, "Brother Cheng, the plant said that there is a laboratory built here a few months ago, and people will observe the animals here every day." Mu Ziking nodded. He looked around and frowned slightly. "There is a barrier, there is an animal controlled by mind consciousness here." He reached back and tried to hold Wei Ran back, but in vain. His heart sank suddenly, and he turned around immediately. Ran. But there was no one behind him. The expressions of Chen Wei and his group changed. What about Xiao Ran? Mu Ziking's body was suddenly covered with layers of haze. Junyi's face was full of gloom, his sideways eyes were cold and stern, and the coldness overflowed his thin lips. Yan Ying, all supernatural animals should be strangled immediately. He must not let Wei Ran be in danger. Not a single point. In other words, an enchantment was summoned to lock the entire primeval forest. Enchantment is an ability similar to barrier, but it is more powerful than barrier, and the coverage area can be arbitrary. Because it is a special space summoned by formation, as long as the caster is here, even if there is no ability to maintain it, the enchantment can remain strong. Time goes back to the past. Wei Ran followed behind Mu Ziking, but took a few steps to the side to check the surroundings and found nothing unusual, but when she turned around and came back, Mu Ziking and the others were nowhere to be seen. Wei Ran's face darkened. Big brother. Big brother. Sakura. The only response to her was the echo. Wei Ran was walking alone in the unfamiliar jungle. Wei Ran calmly held the gun and walked forward. She knew that Mu Ziking would find her soon. Ah, woo. Oh. Ooh. Ooh. Suddenly, 2 loud whistles came from a distance, causing Wei Ran to stop suddenly. Her originally indifferent face was covered with a cold one. Tiger. She knew that she would suffer a big loss, so she wanted to avoid it, but it was not what she wanted. Just now the roar of the tiger was still far away, but at this moment, a fierce tiger with a stronger physique than the Siberian tiger and black markings on its body sprang out of the weeds in front of it, and it also had cracks on its body. More. The corners of Wei Ran's mouth were tightly pursed, and her brows were delicately frowned. Fortunately, there was a big tree blocking her in front of her, and the tiger hadn't spotted her yet. She clenched the gun with both hands and was on guard, slowly backing away little by little calmly. Click. The sound of branches snapping. When Wei Ran stepped back, she stepped on a branch on the ground behind her. Her heart sank suddenly, and she looked at the tiger suddenly. Hearing the sound, the fierce tiger was leaping towards her without making a sound. She immediately dodged to the right and jumped vigorously, landed and rolled a few times to hide in the half-person high grass next to her, and then squatted down to get a safe distance away from the tiger. A few drops of blood fell on the ground under Wei Ran's feet, followed by more blood. Although she was lucky enough to avoid the tiger's attack just now, and was not bitten by the tiger, the distance was too close, and the sharp tiger's claws caught her back shoulder. He didn't feel it when he got up, but as the blood trickled down his arm and dripped down the tip of the assault rifle, Wei Ran realized that he was injured, and it wasn't serious. In just a moment, the thick blood had already flowed out, and the intense pain spread and swept her. Wei Ran held her breath, slowly, her eyes were stern. This fierce tiger should have supernatural powers, and it won't be able to hide for long just by hiding, so the only way to get out of this place, as soon as possible. She calmly took out the syringe of hemostatic and painkiller medicine that had been installed before, and then hit it directly on the shoulder. Wei Ran can only treat the wound in this simple way first. As long as there is no more bleeding and no pain, she can save her physical strength in exchange for vitality. She half bent her body and slowly walked out of the grass. In fact, it is extremely unsafe in the grass, because the senses of smell and hearing of animals are particularly sensitive, and the location of the target can be identified by any sound. What's more, she shed so much blood just now, it must smell blood, and must leave the grass. As soon as she came out of the grass, the tiger chased after her at a high speed. Wei Ran turned around, changed direction, and ran to the side while shooting at it continuously, hitting it several times. The tiger got angry, bowed slightly and kept whining, but the speed slowed down, and finally stopped 20 meters away from her. But Wei Ran's face was even more serious, because this was the prelude to the tiger's violent attack. She held the gun tightly with one hand at all times, took out a grenade, bit off the safety ring with her mouth, and threw it at the tiger vigorously with her hand. But the grenade was stalled in mid-air and then exploded in mid-air. Wei Ran's heart sank suddenly. This fierce tiger is actually a mental consciousness control ability. It's just that the level is very low, but it is more than enough to deal with ordinary people like her. Just as the tiger wanted to rush over again, Kong Wu's powerful tiger claws were tightly entwined by the stems and roots in the ground, and he slowly climbed up towards the strong body of the tiger. Sakura Wei Ran murmured in surprise. She immediately fired and stepped back, but within a few shots, she was also suspended in midair. She has seen this kind of situation countless times, but she never thought that it would happen again to her today. Wei Ran, unable to move, couldn't help but floated towards the tiger that had been entangled in the flesh and blood by the roots. The tiger is only thinking about the food, it doesn't feel pain at all, the tiger is only excited about the food coming to its mouth. This time he couldn't wait even more. regardless of the bloody entanglement, he jumped up and wanted to bite Wei Ran. At this critical juncture when Wei Ran just wanted to enter the secret realm to avoid the tiger. Bang, roar. A domineering and restrained breath and a white shadow slammed into the tiger at the same time. Xiao ran. Miss Wei. Yan Yang and Xiao Dongyang arrived. Because of this, the tiger interrupted the ability, and Wei Ran fell straight down from mid-air, and then she was caught by a restrained and strong force. She felt that she was falling gently backwards, and then her strong arms caught her and wrapped her whole body into the warm and hard chest, and the familiar cold breath lingered on her. Wei Ran's heart that had been raised all the time, then settled down. Ran. Mu Ziking didn't notice much because Wei Ran was wearing a black suit in the distance, until he received Wei Ran back into his arms, touched Wei Ran's wet body. I thought it was sweat, but when I raised my hand it was covered in blood. Wei Ran's back was turned to him again, and Mu Ziking immediately saw the 3 palm-length wounds on the right back shoulder that were almost bone-deep. Mu Ziking stretched out his hand wanting to touch but didn't dare to touch it with extreme pity, and lowered his head and kissed the area near Wei Ran's wound lightly. Wei Ran had obviously stopped the bleeding from the wound. Although the bleeding had stopped, there was no further treatment, and it was now turning white and showing signs of inflammation. When he suddenly opened his eyelids again, how could he feel any pity? The bottom of his eyes was extremely cold and slowly turned to the bloody tiger that was tightly entwined by the roots. Mu Ziking was angry. After being attacked by Mu Ziking's powerful and domineering attack before, the nearly 3-meter-long tiger was already dying, stretched and pulled like being tied. Mu Ziking just narrowed his cold eyes slightly. The tiger was suddenly divided into pieces by 5 horses, and then all the remaining limbs gathered together again, melting to death instantly. Chapter 86. I want to save it. Xiao Dongyang looked at the pile of bloodless things on the ground in horror before he really understood why Chen Wei and the others said that Wei Ran could not be provoked by anyone. Because Wei Ran is life to Mu Ziking, anyone who touches his life will die. At this time, because Wei Ran was by Mu Ziking's side, she threw her peace of mind to him with all her heart, and her spirit was tense all the time. At this moment she closed her eyes and softened her body and fell down. Mu Ziking was afraid that she would hurt her, so she could hold her follow her. The pale little face that was just revealed even had a few small scratches on the forehead and cheeks. Isham ... thirsty. Wei Ran felt dizzy from the heat, half awake, and then was fed cool water to moisten her thirsty throat. A deep and sweet voice that is soft and coaxing. After that she fell asleep again after being patted and coaxed early in the morning. After she really woke up, she opened her eyes slightly for a while before realizing that she was sleeping in a tent. Before going to the primeval forest this time, Wei Ran guessed that he would also spend the night outside, so he took out a simple disassembled tent and let each of them tie it under the equipment bag. The wound on her back shoulder was treated and bandaged by Mu Ziking, taking out the medicine from the equipment bag, and her body was also cleaned, dry and comfortable. There is some itching and numbness in the wound, but there is no discomfort or pain. Wei Ran sat up slowly, feeling a little dizzy. She lowered her head and lightly pressed her swollen forehead. At this time the curtain of the tent opened, and a pleasant voice came to her ears. Are you awake? Wei Ran raised her head when she heard the words and saw Mu Ziking came in and sat next to her with a bowl of self-heating food porridge. His usual cold eyes became warm, and he touched her forehead with his big hand to test the temperature is still normal, so I can rest assured. She asked suspiciously, what's wrong with me? Although the injury was not serious, it should not be so weak. You had a fever last night, you talked nonsense all night, and the fever subsided in the middle of the night. Speaking of this, Mu Ziking's face turned to her rare seriousness again. Why don't you go into the space? Wei Ran curled her lips suddenly, lowered her head and muttered aggrievedly, I'm afraid you won't find me if I enter the space. You will be anxious if I disappear suddenly. You also know that there is no concept of time and space. And I was about to enter the space at the last moment, so you came. Mu Zikang looked at Wei Ran, who lowered his head and eyes for a while, and then flashed the blood-stained image of that hand. I was afraid again for a while. He sighed, avoided her wound, hugged her into his arms, and said softly, next time you encounter this situation, remember to go into the space. Don't worry that I can't find you. There is no such thing in this world. Anyone can escape my consciousness. The only thing that can't search for you is your space, so don't be afraid. I will wait for you to appear at the place where you last stayed. She smiled happily and hugged Mu Zikang, then listened to brother and wait for brother to pick me up. Mu Zikang patted her back lightly. I think we'll have to tie you to your trouser waist with a rope all the time in the future. Wei Ran giggled non-stop. The two got bored for a while. I'm hungry. Wei Ran raised her head in his broad arms and whispered coquettishly. Mu Zikang took the porridge at just the right temperature and fed it into her mouth in small sips. You didn't eat anything last night, so you should also avoid eating this wound. Eat something light first, and make up for it when you get back. Wei Ran ate the porridge and nodded obediently. After finishing the porridge, Mu Zikang fed her 2 bottles of body recovery water. When Wei Ran came out of the tent, it was already past 9 o'clock. Yan Yang walked up to Wei Ran and asked nervously, Zhao Ran, are you okay? You scared us to death with the blood all over your body. It's okay, it's fine. Don't worry. Wei Ran waved her hand in different laugh. She also felt that everyone looked much more relaxed than yesterday, and murmured it seems that everyone is very leisurely today. Jiang Nanfeng said from the side that's not leisurely, after you disappeared yesterday, Brother Cheng not only summoned the barrier lock up the entire primeval forest. People inside can't get out, people outside can't get in, and Yan Yang is asked to strangle all the supernatural animals here, leaving no one behind. Wei Ran recalled yesterday that the tiger was entangled by the roots. The picture also reminds me of that touch of whiteness. She pulled Mu Zikang back. What about the snow lion? Mu Zikang's conscious attack was particularly fierce yesterday, and the snow lion also ran into the tiger at the same time in order to save her. Although it has a diamond-shaped transformation, its level is not high, and it will definitely be strongly affected. It is estimated that the internal injury is also serious. It left by itself yesterday. Mu Zikang calmly said something that surprised everyone. In fact, it has been following us around for the past 2 months. When the snow lion rushed over at that time, it was indeed Mu Zikang's consciousness. The attack caused serious internal injuries, and he even fell to the ground at one point and was unable to get up. But yesterday, after Mu Zikang took care of Wei Ran's wound, he found that the snow lion had left. Immediately afterwards, Wei Ran had a weird high fever that persisted, and he didn't have the time to take care of other things. Wei Ran frowned. Then, where is it now? Mu Zikang looked at several buildings in the distance with dark and cold eyes, and Wei Ran and his party followed his gaze. There it came for revenge. Ah, come on. Come back on the 13th to attack, and there are already many casualties in the laboratory. Several core experimenters locked themselves in the innermost part, trying to contact the outside world, but unexpectedly there has been no response since yesterday. Now only half of the dozen or so supernatural beings guarding outside were attacked by it. The entire primeval forest was bounded by Mu Zikang, so all communication equipment was out of order. The roar of the lion shook the forest. Snow Lion was already covered in blood, and his mouth and nose continued to overflow with blood. Its powers were exhausted, and it could not summon any skills, but it still refused to take a step back. The supernatural being not far from the laboratory took out shells, and while the Snow Lion was about to fire the cannon, the Snow Lion also rushed towards the supernatural being. Boom! The sound of the explosion and the screams of people sounded at the same time. Those who screamed were the remaining supernatural beings stationed here, and the explosion caused the laboratory to be razed to the ground. Mu Zikang took Wei Ran and the others teleported not far from the Snow Lion, and finally controlled the cannonball to turn to the laboratory. In the end, due to serious internal injuries and a fierce fight, the Snow Lion exhausted his powers and fell on the grass, leaving only the last breath of energy. Wei Ran was eager to run over, but Mu Zikang pulled him back and frowned slightly. Your body is injured. Mu Zikang then teleported to Snow Lion with Wei Ran. Wei Ran immediately took out a syringe, sacred grass, pure liquid. As long as there is still a breath of god-level herbs that can be revived. Although he could save his life after pushing the pure liquid of Xingjiakou to Snow Lion, he still needs to be carefully recuperated before he can fully recover. With a serious face, Wei Ran put his hand on Mu Zikang's forearm instead. Brother, I want to save it. Chapter 87. Just as. Mu Zikang removed the barrier. Shangguan Ling's solemn and slightly hasty voice came from Xiao Dongyang's communication equipment. Xiao Dongyang, what's the matter with you? Xiao Dongyang was stunned. Why did the colonel come here? He then adjusted his thoughts and replied, Colonel, we are all fine, Miss Wei is injured. He looked back at the big guy. Colonel, we need a plane here to transport some of Mr. Mu's big items. Yesterday afternoon, the southern border base received news that Mu Zikang had lost contact and immediately reported it to Shangguan Ling. This has never happened in 2 months. Shangguan Ling took a helicopter yesterday afternoon and arrived at the foot of the forest in Qingzhou at night. So in just 10 minutes, the plane landed on the open grass next to Mu Zikang. Shangguan Ling then got off the plane. Xiao Dongyang went up to him and told Shangguan Ling why he lost contact in the past 2 days. Shangguan Ling looked at the laboratory that was bombed into a flat ground in the distance and sneered. Well blown up. He turned around and asked Xiao Dongyang, where are the supernatural animals? Yang straightened his body and replied. Shangguan Ling nodded. What does Mu Zikang want to transport and needs an airplane? A lion with supernatural powers. So Mu Zikang meant to keep only one and not the others. And just as Su Yi easily boarded the plane with the unconscious Snow Lion in his arms, Chang Shuxian came up with the Golden Dragon. It was only half an hour slower than Shangguan Ling. Obviously, he had been waiting at the foot of the mountain until the barrier was removed. The men he brought surrounded Mu Zikang, Wei Ran and Shangguan Ling with weapons. Standing beside Mu Zikang, Wei Ran cast a disgusted glance at Chang Shuxian. It may be that men always have a desire to conquer what they can't get, so Chang Shuxian still has a strong desire for Wei Ran after the painful experience last time. It's just that it has already evolved into a kind of abnormal psychology, which no longer contains a little emotion. He looked at the injury on Wei Ran's fair and delicate face without a trace of distress, and actually felt the beauty of a broken porcelain doll in his heart. With a hint of excitement, he pretended, Little Ran, are you injured? Wei Ran didn't think much of it. Back to him, I feel that even if I say a word with him, I feel that I have polluted myself. Mu Zikang hugged her slender waist. As if he had Chang Shuxian's perverted mind, he gave Chang Shuxian a cold look. With just this one glance, Chang Shuxian suddenly felt that the injury after recuperating for several months seemed to be starting to ache again. He touched his hand subconsciously and stared at Mu Zikang sternly. Shangguan Ling stepped forward without anger and authority. What's going on? Chang Shuxian looked at Shangguan Ling, then changed his polite smile and said, Colonel, this place has been abandoned for a long time, and the people below made a mistake, put it on the encirclement and suppression list. Yesterday I heard that animals were being used for supernatural experiments here, so I wanted to come over quickly, but I was blocked at the foot of the mountain. I want to invite the southern border the base gave us to deal with the White Lion General. After all, the accident happened here. Why bother you on the southern border, and taking the White Lion out will cause harm to others, don't you think so? What did Chang Shuxian mean by this? That is, people from the southern border base should not interfere with the affairs of the Jichang base. Before Shangguan Ling could reply, Mu Zikang said coldly and forcefully, This Snow Lion is mine, who dares to take it? The Golden Dragon was furious. He had been suppressed by Mu Zikang for the past 2 months, and now he took advantage of the Jichang site, so he challenged Mu Zikang, do you want to run wild on other people's land at your southern border base? Wei Ran snorted coldly, glancing at the golden dragon. Coldly say is going to be wild. Do we still need to see the time? It's none of our business if the Jizhong base makes a mistake. We only know that the place where we are standing now is provided by Yu Jizhong for us to go to the southern border, so the siege is over. In the future, all supplies here must be returned to the southern border. Yu the Golden Dragon was furious, but although Wei Ran was strong, what he said was reasonable, and he couldn't refute it for a while. Chang Shexian's face was cold and dark, and he didn't pretend to be in front of Wei Ran. He looked at Shang Guanling's attempt to provoke Colonel. The post-apocalyptic southern border base is a role model among all bases. All major bases say that the southern border is fair. It is thanks to the Colonel himself that the southern border base has become the #1. But today I feel that the people below you seem to want to surpass you. This is a clear reference to ridicule. Shang Guanling, the leader of the big base, is now about to being ridden on the head by the people below. Wei Ran didn't know Shang Guanling well in her previous life, and she couldn't figure out his true thoughts at this time. After all, Chang Shexian's words are enough to create a gap between people's guesses for ordinary people, not to mention that they don't have a deep friendship with Shang Guanling. Mu Zikang felt Wei Ran's worry and stroked her back gently. Wei Ran raised her eyes and caught the fleeting smile on Mu Zikang's mouth. Then he stopped thinking too much. She even thought that if Shang Guanling turned his back on this, at worst, she would put the snow lion in the space. And at this moment the atmosphere was a little condensed. Chang Shexian's provocative words made other people hold back their breath and look at Shang Guanling, waiting for his answer. But Shang Guanling's usual clean and handsome face did not show any abnormality. I just saw him speak lightly. Although Mu Zikang is in the southern border base, he exists independently and is not attached to anyone. He is free to do what he wants to do. This operation is only under his command, and no other interference is allowed, including me. Shang Guanling's words caused Chang Shexian's face to change suddenly, and he was unable to reply for a long time.